Imagine a young man sitting alone on a highway overpass at midnight. Cars rush below him. The city glitters in the distance. And he has nothing. No job, no savings, no one who believes in him. Just a cracked phone screen and one unread message from his mother asking if he is okay. He doesn't answer, because he doesn't know how to explain what happens when a dream starts to feel like a lie. So why did one small clay jar change everything for him? Hello, and welcome. Relax, and let's begin. Today, we follow the story of Eli Carter, a young man who had every reason to give up, yet discovered the one thing that poverty could never take from him. Let's explore together. It was the summer of his 22nd year, in a small Rust Belt town in Ohio, the kind of place where the factories had long since closed, but the silence they left behind never went away. Eli grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. His mother worked double shifts at a diner. His father had been gone since Eli was 9. No phone call, no letter, just an empty chair at the kitchen table every morning. By the time Eli was a teenager, he had learned one thing very clearly. People like us don't get to dream big. That is what his neighbors said. His teachers implied it, though not in those words. And somewhere along the way, Eli began to believe it. But what almost no one in that building knew, Eli Carter could look at a broken machine and understand it in minutes. He could hear someone speak and immediately sense what they were actually afraid of. The word for this is perception. Perception means the ability to understand things deeply, to see what others miss. He had it naturally. He just had no idea what to do with it yet. He tried everything he could think of. A warehouse job at 19 gone after 3 months when the company downsized. A night class at the community college dropped when he couldn't afford the textbooks. A small side business reselling electronics had earned him enough for 2 months, then fell apart. Every door he pushed on seemed to close before he could step through. But the hardest door of all was the one inside his own mind. And one evening in July, standing on that overpass, watching the city he couldn't seem to reach, something was about to break open. Is greater than a week after that night, on the overpass, Eli took the last $200 he had saved and invested it with a man from his neighborhood, someone who promised a guaranteed return in 30 days. The money disappeared in 10. Eli didn't eat for 2 days. Not because there was no food, because shame has a way of taking away your hunger. He sat on his apartment floor and stared at the wall. The word for what he felt is desolate. To feel desolate means to feel completely alone, as if the world has moved on without you and left nothing behind. He thought about quitting the city altogether, going somewhere no one knew him, starting over as someone who had never dared to want more. But then his neighbor, an older man named Ray, who had lived in the building for 30 years, knocked on his door. Ray didn't say much. He just handed Eli a small clay jar, rough, uneven, the kind you find at a craft market. And he said one sentence. "That jar used to be smaller. I rebuilt it. Now, it holds more." Then he left. Eli turned the jar over in his hands for a long time, not sure what to make of it. And here is where the story gets interesting. Because 2 days later, Eli received a letter from his landlord. 60 days to vacate. The building was being sold. He was 22 years old, broke, and about to be homeless. For the first time in his life, Eli sat down with the clay jar in his lap and said out loud the words he had been running from for years. Maybe they were right about me. He held the jar tighter, stared at it, and then Eli did something that no one who knew him could have predicted. He didn't give up, but he did something more difficult than fighting. He got quiet. For the first time in years, Eli stopped running from himself. He moved into a room he rented from Ray, $12 a day, and he spent every evening sitting with the clay jar on the table in front of him, not meditating, not praying, just thinking, asking himself one question over and over. What kind of person am I actually becoming? He started reading books from the public library, free, available, waiting. He started writing, not goals, but honest observations about his own thinking. He noticed how often he told himself a smaller version of his own story. He noticed how often he prepared to fail before he even began. The word for this is potential. Potential means the capacity inside a person that hasn't been fully used yet, the ability that exists before the achievement. Eli realized something that changed his direction entirely. His circumstances were real, but his small thinking was a choice. He rebuilt slowly, a skill here, a client there, one decision at a time, when nobody was watching. Today, psychologists say the most powerful shift a person can make is not changing their situation, it is changing the story they tell about themselves. Eli didn't read that in a book. He just knew the jar on his table used to be smaller, and he had rebuilt it to hold more. And perhaps your own capacity is no different. Perhaps the life waiting for you is already larger than the thoughts you have been allowing inside. Eli began with $200 and a broken belief. He lost everything twice before he understood what he was building, but he never stopped asking himself to grow. Eli's story teaches us that your life cannot rise higher than the size of the thinking you protect. Keep going. Keep learning. Every failure is one step closer to the answer. Your story is still being written. Tonight, find any jar, cup, or container in your home. Put it where you see it every morning. And each day, ask yourself one question before you check your phone. Am I thinking big enough for the life I say I want? That jar doesn't need to be beautiful. It just needs to be bigger than yesterday. Tell me in the comments, what does your jar need to hold more of?